Everything all at once is available at our fingertips when it comes to having these smartphones. And don't get me wrong, I'm very guilty of spending too much time on my phone. Hobbies were created to pass the time, not to fill the time. And I feel like I often find myself filling time by just scrolling on my phone instead of spending time doing things that I actually enjoy. Because every single time I end up doom scrolling on my phone, I never feel satisfied with how I spent the day, and I always feel guilty that I let it go that way. Slight bars. I often feel like I don't have enough time throughout the day. And then when I do have the time, I feel like I end up wasting that time on my phone. It's so easy to pick up your phone to check something like the time or to skip a song and then get distracted by a notification and you just end up doom scrolling. I've probably lost more days of my life scrolling through social media and looking at content than I'd like to admit. Because of this, I've decided it's time for me to make a change. I'm taking a step away from my phone and trying to cut back on this toxic relationship that we have. Now, the self-absorbed part of me has to be honest and admit that I'm partially doing this because it seems like the cool thing to do right now to be chronically offline. Lower screen time is the new social currency. But you know what? If that's the motivation that I need to help me take a step away from this screen that's constantly stealing time out of my life, then maybe that's the best thing. I have been in an abusive relationship with this piece of technology for too long. And while this relationship has been beneficial to me in the past, it's starting to tear away into a million pieces. So I'm soft launching a breakup with my phone and reconnecting with my hobbies, even if it makes things more inconvenient for me. I'm about to go head out to get my hair cut because the sides of my hair have been getting kind of long lately, and I think it's time for a trim. And then after that, I don't know, I think I might let the sides of my hair grow out again just to experiment a little bit, right? Life is too short to look the same way for too long. But we're going to go get this cut, and then I got some important things that I want to talk to you about.
I just got some terrible news, okay? I got my hair cut, and halfway through my haircut, my barber's telling me, I think I'm going to hang up the apron in a couple weeks. No more good priced haircuts because my barber was one of the last barbers who actually charged a reasonable price for a haircut. And now I'm either going to need to find a new barber, a new hairstylist, or go to a new barber shop where inevitably inflation is going to hit my wallet when it comes to these haircuts. So maybe the Eddie Guerrero route is the way to go with the long hair because I don't know that I can stomach paying modern barbershop prices on a regular basis.
The most obvious and largest hurdle that I had to jump over was that I use my phone for pretty much everything. It's an inconvenience to find ways to not use my phone throughout the day. It sits in my pocket all day long, and it's so easy to just pull out and end up doom scrolling and wasting my time on apps that don't need my attention. My daily average for screen time was unfortunately between 9 and 12 hours a day over the last couple of weeks. That is so embarrassing to say out loud. I'm spending more than half of my day in front of this screen. The apps that I used the most throughout the day were obviously TikTok and Instagram, and put together, they were taking up about 3 to 6 hours of screen time for me. I can't keep living like this, so I gotta put my money where my mouth is. Here's what I need to change. First, I gotta connect with myself in more meaningful ways instead of spending my entire day looking at a screen scrolling with no end in sight. There is a major obstacle in the way though. If you've watched some of my previous videos, you know that I post content onto my TikTok account and that I have a medium-sized following there where it's very important that I post on a regular basis, if not on a daily basis, to maintain my following. But I'd be a liar if I said that a lot of the time that I spend on TikTok is often just from scrolling and not necessarily from creating my own videos. So while I still plan on posting onto that TikTok account and creating content for that account, I need to be real with myself and admit that I also need to limit the amount of time that I spend on my For You page. I need to find a specific amount of time that I'm going to allow myself to spend on TikTok throughout the day. And the same goes for Instagram. Although I do think it's going to be a little bit easier to divorce myself from Instagram because I don't use it as often as I use TikTok and I don't post on there as often as I post on TikTok. So it's a little bit easier for me to create that divide. Now I also need to figure out exactly what I'm going to do instead of scrolling through TikTok now that I'm giving myself this extra time throughout the day to work with. Lucky for me, I've got some hobbies that I want to become a bigger part of my day. I love reading books, and I've read more books this year than I have in a long time, pretty much since I was still a student. But admittedly, some of the time that I could have spent on reading books was spent on my phone when it didn't need to be. So I'm going to try to read at least 30 minutes every single day. just to get in the habit of reading every single day and really sharpen this pencil that I call my brain. I want to make more videos. At the start of this year, I really tried my best to post a new video onto this channel every single week. And while that lasted for, a good couple of weeks, it fizzled out. It wasn't sustainable for me, and I needed to find a way to make a more sustainable effort. Well, this is my way to make a more sustainable effort. I need to put that effort into creating the videos, and the only way I can put in that effort is if I find and make the time for them. So today is only step one. So for 1 week, in order to take a break from being chronically online and essentially soft launch myself into a state of chronically offlineness, I'm going to take a break from social media and try to limit my usage of social media to 2 hours a day or less. And if things go well, maybe this can become a long-term solution instead of just a 1-week experiment. Now I'm going to be candid with you for a moment. I'm going to take off my hat so you know I'm being for real. I've got no secrets to hide when the hat is off. Let me be real with you guys. I am someone who has spent the majority of their childhood being chronically online. I've spent the majority of my adulthood being chronically online. It's difficult to break away from the screens that you've been used to your whole life. Now, I know to some people, this might not sound like that big of a deal, especially if you're someone who's a little bit older who grew up without social media and these content creation websites. I'm not that person. I was exposed to this stuff my whole life, so it's different for me. I remember being on YouTube when it was brand new. I remember being on Facebook when really I had no business having a Facebook account. I remember being on Twitter when it was still Twitter. I remember being on Instagram when everything was in a chronological order on your timeline and you couldn't DM each other. You couldn't send links. You could only post photos. This is going to be a challenge for me, but it's a challenge that I feel I need to undertake. Now, I've already got a little bit of a head start on breaking up with my phone because for the last couple of months, I've been working on building my digital music library so that way that can be a reliable source of me to listen to music instead of using streaming services like Spotify or Apple Music. When I was a kid, one of the things that I loved to do was to download albums and put them on my iPod Touch or eventually on my phone, and that's how I would listen to music. And one thing that I really loved about that was that it really helped me build a connection with the music because I was listening to the same albums over and over again, and I really got to know those albums, got to know what I liked about them, what I disliked about them, as opposed to how a lot of us listen to music these days. A lot of us will just listen to an album once or twice, or really just find a couple of albums that we'd like to listen to on loop, and that's it. And I think a big part of that is because we've kind of turned music into fast food, where we consume and we consume and we consume, and we have so many options that it's hard to narrow it down to what we really like. And when we do like something, maybe we don't really get to appreciate it as much as we would if we had to pay for it instead of just getting it brought to us by a streaming service and by algorithms. I've been doing a couple of things to build up my digital music library, and one of those things is to take the albums that I already own in a physical medium and converting them into a digital file. And one of the easiest ways to do that is with these CDs, these bad boys. I showed you guys in my last video that I had started collecting CDs again, and part of the reason is because I can turn these CDs into digital files and easily store them onto my computer and onto something really cool like my iPod. Now, this iPod I've owned for a couple of years now. I think at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years now, and I've been using it more and more regularly over the last couple of weeks because over the last couple of weeks, I've really made the effort to convert these music files and put them onto my iPod and use this as one of my daily drivers when it comes to listening to music. We're halfway through the 2020s and most computers don't have a built-in CD drive for you to burn CDs onto your computer anymore, so you're gonna need one of these CD drives that you can plug in externally to your computer. The one that I have here, I bought a couple of years ago for a little project, and now I'm really getting my full use out of it. Pretty much what I do is I take this CD here, open up the case, pop this CD into the CD drive, burn it onto my computer, and then transfer that onto my iPod. Something like this has really helped me really appreciate the music that I own again because I own it. I'm not renting it. I'm not leasing it like I would with the streaming service. I own this music and I have it with me portably, but I also have it saved onto my computer and on an external drive. So that way, if something ever happens to those computers or those drives, I have multiple backups of these music files because I never want to lose them. I own them. And who knows how long these songs are going to be on streaming? Hopefully forever, but you never know when streaming services or record labels are going to decide that they want to take their artist's music off of that platform. You are not going to be able to find Frank Ocean's Nostalgia Ultra on streaming services because he never got some of these samples cleared, so he can't make any money off of them. Therefore, he can't post them on streaming services. But I've got it right here. And you can't take that away from me. In search of something that could help build some distance between me and my phone, I actually went back into the past and found an old relic that still works just as good as the day it was new. I've had my social media limited to about 2 hours for the last couple of days, and what really has been the challenge is TikTok, because a lot of the editing that I do for the videos that I post on TikTok is done directly from the app itself. So it's really hard to limit my time on the app when I'm using the app to edit my videos. So I don't know if that's an exception that I need to make or whether I need to use other software like iMovie on my phone. But either way, it's just the editing software on the app is just so convenient to use for these short form videos that I don't know that I can limit myself to 2 hours a day when I'm editing multiple videos a day for that platform. I don't know. That's a challenge that I'm facing right now. And if that's a challenge that I'm facing, I'm sure it's a challenge that other people are also facing. As for Instagram, man, I have yet to get a single warning about my screen time on Instagram. Honestly, I could probably lower it even more because I just don't use it as often as I'm using TikTok. And really, my TikTok, I have been limiting my usage. It really is just the editing that's eating up most of that screen time. So after a little over a week of trying to limit my screen time, I ended up with some interesting realizations. The most important thing that I figured out is that when you treat your hobbies like a job, they start to feel like a job. They start to feel like you're doing work instead of having fun, instead of passing the time in a way that you think is fun. For instance, when I was forcing myself to read, even when I wasn't in the mood, it felt more like a chore than something that I actually enjoyed. So there's got to be some sort of balance here where you are still making time for your hobbies and you're still purposely and intentionally finding time throughout your day to enjoy these hobbies without making it feel like you're forcing yourself to do something that you should be wanting to do. So I still want to make time for my hobbies, but I don't want it to feel like I'm clocking in for a shift at work. As for social media, I found it relatively easy to stay off of Instagram. Only once or twice throughout this last week and a half did my phone have to remind me that I was almost out of time on Instagram. I feel like it's just an app that I don't use as much as I used to in the past, so it's a little bit easier for me to let go, a little bit easier for me to limit myself, and I might even limit myself even more than I originally planned. Now, TikTok was a different story, and that produced much more of a struggle. I found that most of my screen time from that app didn't actually come from scrolling through my For You page and watching videos. It actually came from me editing my own videos. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon because it's so easy for me to edit the videos on TikTok and upload them directly from the edited file as opposed to putting that stuff onto my computer or editing it on a different app on my phone. Because at that point, I'm not even limiting my screen time. I'm just moving my screen time elsewhere. So I think my limit for TikTok is going to stay where it's at, and I'm just going to have to adjust as time goes on and just try to find a way to not use it as often as I did before. As for music, I've really enjoyed putting music on my iPod and using my iPod to listen to music, especially in my living room. It's so easy to put on my iPod, connect it to my speakers, and play music that way. It's been so fun to find old CDs and put those onto my computer and then put those onto my iPod. It's been so fun to just carry around this digital music library that actually means something to me, that is something that I own, as opposed to a streaming service where I'm essentially renting music that I don't own, and the moment I stop paying, it's no longer in my possession. It's felt good to reconnect with what I own in my music library, and it's felt good to just listen to music that I know I'm going to like, as opposed to listening to what these streaming services think I might like. So this was just something that I wanted to do in order to get away from using streaming services, but it ended up turning into a hobby of its own, and it's honestly the hobby that I've probably spent the most time working on over the last couple of days. Now, as for reading, I've got a lot of books that I've recently added to my to-be-read list. So look, I don't know that I can stay away from my phone forever. It's just so ingrained into our culture at this time that it's hard to do so. But I also know that my phone doesn't own me. I own the phone. I can put the phone down and replace it with better hobbies and better activities that are better for me and more fun for me that aren't rotting my brain away. I've learned that I can rely on my phone less and less. And it's not exactly cold turkey. It's not like I'm replacing my phone with a dumb phone right away. But I know that I don't need it as often as I thought that I did. And look, if ditching your phone and ditching social media suddenly becomes the cool thing to do, as people are realizing that they have an addiction to their smartphones and are starting to get tired of it, then so be it. That's a win for me, because as long as I get to stay away from my phone, I don't care if it looks cool or not. But if it does look cool, that's just some bonus points.